Okay, hello, all of you lovely people. Is this a weird thing to do? Probably. I don't know. You know me, I will teach any day of the week about any topic. So I'm like, hey, why don't we use the book launch as an opportunity to talk about revision? Um, because the thing that is so hilarious about this book is it is the absolute shortest thing I have ever written. Also, it is the thing I revised most. In fact, I think there are maybe a few words in the same spot from beginning to end, but there's almost nothing in this book that was in the original book, but it does have a lot of the same DNA. So we're going to talk a little bit about revision. I'm going to show you how messy my handwriting is. You're going to see snippets from my writer's notebook. So I'm going to do a little backstory on sort of how the book came to be. And then I'm going to talk about writing the visual story because this is really spare text, almost like akin to writing a wordless book. So my editor really made me sit down and think through the visual story. And then I had to write up very detailed illustration notes for the illustrator because so much of the story was not in the words that were on the page. So we'll talk a little bit about how you do that. I am going to, we'll read the book. So even if you don't have your book, I'm going to read you the book. We're going to do a read aloud. And then you all will have read it. So if you would be lovely enough to drop me a little review on Amazon and or Goodreads, even if it's just one word, like it was mid, I guess that's 3 words, mid. My kids love that word. You could say it was mid. You could say love it, whatever. You don't have to write like a detailed review. Every little word, even if it's just every little review, even if it's just a single word helps. And then we'll do a little raffle. I put all of your names into a spinny wheel and we'll spin the wheel and see who wins a copy, which I will sign and send to you. And then if you already have bought your copy, you can gift it to a little free library or a child in your life. So that's kind of our agenda for today. And we're going to see if my handwriting is worse than Renee's. She's a doctor, so I don't know. We'll see. But the first thing is, can I share slides? That is always the first thing. And I got to back up to the beginning. All right, guys. So you can already see how bad it is. So I think I know most of you. If not, it's lovely to see you, but it's also a delight to see so many people that I've worked with over the years and people who have even critiqued the story. So it's very exciting to see all of you. Thank you for coming. This is me. I love all things children's nonfiction. I love to write it. I love to teach about it. I love to talk about it on my podcast. There is almost nothing I love more than children's nonfiction. So this is me. Okay, so I had to go back and I'm like, how did I even get this story idea? I don't remember. And this is where I am so grateful for my writer's notebooks. So I have turned to these are paperage notebooks. And they are lined, they have a pocket, they have little ribbon bookmarks, it has an elastic band. Anyway, these are my favorite notebooks, but I always have a writer's notebook going. And in March 2020, the year 2020, so this is right after COVID shut everything down, at least in California. I'm not sure about where you were living, but we were all on lockdown and my kids were, their spring break had turned into permanent spring break. And I was kind of like, okay, I need something to work on, right? I need some things to keep me occupied. So I kind of went through a list of what were my current top story ideas. And I sort of listed them out. And one thing that was in that top 12 actually was this exact quote. Edwin Hubble, who is the astronomer who discovered that the Milky Way galaxy is actually part of a universe. And then later he realized that our universe is expanding. Those are Hubble's great contributions. So I thought Edwin Hubble slash Nancy Roman, who is considered the mother of the Hubble Space Telescope. So she was really the kind of guiding force behind bringing that project to fruition. And then I was like, Hubble Space Telescope, because as many of you know, I used to work for NASA. I love space. I love airplanes. So I thought, oh, this is kind of up my alley. This could be interesting. So that was the genesis of the idea. And if you've seen the book or you've seen the jacket flap copy of the book, you know that is not what this is. So let's talk about how ideas grow, change, evolve, and who helps us finally achieve our vision. Okay, so phase one is we're going to do a little initial idea investigation. And this is a process that I normally go through with most story ideas. I've done a webinar recently about this process, but I'm kind of looking at two things when I'm analyzing a story idea and figuring out if I want to jump into it. So the first question is, I do a little bit of market research. What is already out there or what is coming up if I'm looking at Publishers Marketplace deal announcements? So I did a quick little search, and Laura Gell had just released Always Looking Up, which is a bio of Nancy Roman, the mother of Hubble. I believe that came out in 2019. So it had just come up the previous year. Now, that's not to say that I couldn't have done another picture book biography of Nancy Roman. But if I was going to choose to do that, I was going to have to take a different approach from Laura in her book, which was pretty much a straightforward picture book biography. I realized there was no picture book biography at that time about Edwin Hubble. Subsequently, there is now a beautiful picture book biography of Hubble. I can't remember the name of it, but it is absolutely stunning. And then my second piece is now I'm also trying to figure out what research is available, because I know that for me, the best process is to start with some good secondary sources if I can get my hands on them. Things like histories, biographies, if I'm writing about another scientific topic, some sort of secondary source written by an expert. And so I'm looking to see what secondary sources are available. And then also, if I'm writing, depending on what I'm writing, what primary sources are available. So for example, if I were going to do the bio of Hubble, are his journals available or his letters or an oral history? What sort of opportunities will I have to hear his voice firsthand so that I can kind of get down to the emotion of the story? So those are the two pieces that I'm looking for when it comes to what's available for research. So one book that really jumped out at me was this book called Starlight Detectives: How Astronomers, Inventors, and Eccentrics Discovered the Modern Universe. It's by Alan Hirschfeld. And in my writer's notebook, I noted that the publisher's copy, the publisher's description of this book, reminded me of Brian Flocka's picture book Moonshot, which is a book about the whole team behind the Apollo 11 moon mission. And so I was really intrigued by this idea of discovering the universe, not just being Hubble's discovery, but being a discovery of a lot of scientists and engineers, and it really being the sum of a lot of effort. So that was kind of in the back of my mind, even as I was doing some of this initial investigation. And so, the second phase, even before I really make a lot of research notes, is doing just a lot of reading and thinking and trying to figure out, what do I think about this topic? So I am reading books about Edwin Hubble and how, and his discovery. I'm reading books about the Hubble Space Telescope and how it came to be. And as I'm reading these secondary sources, I am making some notes and tracking some of the research that I've hunted down and some of the things that I need to find. I'm just making notes about what jumps out with me in terms of sort of the big idea or what I might be trying to say with this manuscript. And it was really, I mean, first, this was really like a 6-month process of trying to figure out what I was trying to say. And in fact, it was a few months before I even put pen to paper to try to figure out a first draft. And this whole time, I'm also reading mentor texts because for me, a lot of times, mentor texts kind of give me a shorthand for figuring out what I'm trying to do. And I'm going to show you some of the mentor texts that I looked at in a minute. But one that I had bought very early on was Meg Pincus's Winged Wonders. It had just come out and I had just ordered it. Sorry, I'm pulling it off my shelf here. So the thing that's really interesting about this book, it's called Solving the Monarch Migration Mystery. And it's really a book about, who figured out where the monarch butterflies overwinter in Mexico. It was a decades-long scientific mystery, and nobody knew the answer. But the way that Meg tells the story is she says, it's basically a mystery that a lot of people helped solve. And then she goes through and she looks at all the different people that contributed to solving this scientific mystery. So as I'm making notes, I'm also reading mentor texts and I'm making notes about things that interest me. And again, this idea of a collaborative scientific process and many people working together was deep in my mind also as I read this book. So then we have like the literal mess. And this is what I love about writing in a notebook. Mine is super messy. Like I am drawing pictures of possible structures. I'm drawing circles. I'm drawing thumbnails of like what the beginning spread is, what the ending spread is, so I can think about what's changing over the course of the book. And I'm just making all these little notes. And so what I'm starting to figure out, I'm even jotting down like what could be a possible working title, right? To see the universe, a universe made visible, a visible universe, right? So I'm starting to think about, first I'm like, okay, well, what if I put the Hubble Space Telescope in there? Okay, well, we could start with maybe like a galaxy or a nebula that we can't really see or it's somehow unknown. And then we're going to go through the process of this book and through, Hubble and the Hubble Space Telescope, this galaxy or nebula becomes known at the end. And maybe we have like a little Hubble Space Telescope in the picture. All right. Or, am I going to work backwards? Am I going to start like Winged Wonders? She basically tells us like, here's the mystery. Here's what we now know. And now kind of let's work backwards to see all these people that contributed and how all their contributions added up, right? So I'm sketching these ideas. Do I need to work backwards? Or, is it really not so much the Hubble Space Telescope, but about Hubble and the beginning, the universe is unknowable, and then the end, it's discovered, and Hubble's kind of like the agent of change. So I'm making all these like crazy notes and drawing pictures of possible structures, just trying to figure out like what is the DNA of this story. And this is like a literal quote from my messy notebook. And it's like, should I tell the story in reverse cumulative, end with a Hubble Space Telescope discovery, and work backwards like before she was Harriet? That's another one by Lisa Klein Ransom. Or just cumulative like Meg Pincus's Winged Wonders, right? So I'm using these mentor texts as like a kind of shorthand to help me try to figure out what I'm trying to say and how I might organize some of these ideas. Okay, so remember, I wrote those story ideas down March 20th during the pandemic. And here we are, about 6 weeks later, it's the end of April. And what I started seeing, I started kind of dividing my ideas into a couple of lists. And one list is like scientists who made discoveries about our universe. And I mean, that list goes back to the Greeks. It goes back to some Persian astronomers, right? So it's a really long list of people who are making different discoveries about aspects of our universe. So that's kind of one list of things I had going on. And then I had another list because I was starting to notice that every time we had like a new technology, it drove some kind of scientific discovery. So, we can see so much in the night sky, but then we develop telescopes and now we can see more. Or we develop, different things with chemistry and now we can learn more. Or we develop photography and now we can see more when it comes to the universe. So I kind of had like these two lists going. And I was like, okay, so is this now a story about scientific tools and people and how they work together? Is it overlapping like Kate Messner's The Next President, where she shows different scientists' lives overlapping? Am I going to show what the universe looked like in different time periods, what people thought it looked like? And this whole time, I'm also thinking like, hey, it would be kind of fun to do a little how-to book, like a how-to approach. You're Invited to a Mothball had recently come out. That's one of the pictures you see on the screen by Laurie Griffin Burns. And it has a how-to structure, like basically, how do you do a mothball where you're observing moths at night? And I was like, oh, a how-to structure might be kind of fun. Maybe I can like weave in a how-to aspect. So I'm starting to develop this idea of having a layered text. So the top layer was going to be kind of a how to do science, and the second layer was going to be a little piece about somebody who had a contribution in helping us see the universe the way that we see it today. So that's kind of where I had landed. So after 4 months of researching and thinking and drawing all these really weird notes, I came up with a first draft. And this is how it went. So the black is kind of the top layer text. How do you find a universe? Such a silly question. The stars have shone in the sky for forever. Yes, yes, but who discovered they were part of something enormous, bigger than our Milky Way? What astronomer mapped our galaxy's borders, discovered something sat on the other side? Edwin Hubble's star shone brightest, eclipsing everybody, all the others. But to say he found the universe isn't really fair. It's a story, thousands of years and dozens of people in the making, a story of how science happens slowly with many people making their own discoveries. And then I start going through the kind of process of how you discover the universe. First, look up and wonder. If you lived in ancient times, you might ask, why do some stars shine steady while others sparkle and shift overhead? So you can see I was starting to work with this layered text. And in my notebook, I also had like these lists of scientific tools and processes that scientists use, like observing, calculating, measuring, predicting. And I was trying to weave these different aspects of the scientific process into that topped layer. Okay, so I got a draft down. So this is probably July. And I send it, I have a few different critique groups, but I send it to my critique group for the very first time, where it received a very lukewarm reception. And this is the value of your outside readers. Sometimes they can look at your story and tell you what your book is really about, even when you can't see it. And so here are a couple of quotes from my awesome critique group. The first one I think is from Margaret. She says, I feel like this is such a big, complicated topic and will need to be majorly simplified to convey in a picture book. No kidding. And then I think this quote from Wendy is just so amazing because she was so spot on, but I could not see what she was talking about for a long time. She said, is your focus on the individual big names in astronomy, Or do you want to talk about an aspect of science and how science isn't a straight line of advances, kind of like PB revision? The individuals themselves are perhaps less important to that message. Okay, so Wendy nailed it in July, but it was going to take me a while and some other trials and failures to see that she was really right. But she, from the get go, drilled down into exactly what I was trying to do with this book. So, often we still don't listen to ourselves. So these are some notes from the end of August, right? And I'm writing down these notes like science is a process, not just a collection of facts in a textbook. We can be wrong. We need to be open to revision. It's ongoing, it's global, it's more than it's collaborative. We test ideas, we collect evidence, we ask questions, and that there's this role of collaboration and community. So I'm like, okay, this is really interesting, right? I'm making these notes in my notebook. And still, I don't listen to myself when it comes to what this book is really about. So instead, I take the same top layer that I had about how science happens, and I decide to kind of create a layered picture book biography. So now I'm not going to focus on all these different scientists. I'm just going to focus on Edwin Hubble, but I'm going to keep that same top line. And I'm going to have to turn this way so I can read it. But it starts out, this is science, things we know, things like this is the universe, a space filled with the collections of stars called galaxies, each held together by the tug of gravity. And then I talk about, Hubble, who traced the boundaries of our universe in 1925. But this is science too, a process for making discoveries, which is often long and messy, more a squiggle than a straight line, from we don't know to fact. Instead, evidence accumulates until its weight tilts and tumbles. So how does science start? By looking up with a heart full of wonder. And then I start following Hubble as a kid in Missouri. And the whole way through this picture book biography, I have this like 2-layered text. Okay. So now I send it off to a different set of critique partners looking for feedback, because there is something really valuable about having completely fresh eyes on your project. And so this is where I encourage you to have maybe more than one set of critique partners, because when we read the same manuscripts over and over, it's really hard to give truly unbiased feedback. So here's my second critique group. And essentially what they told me, and this is from Olga, this is in September of 2020. She says, science and scientific process is a very interesting topic, and your bold text is nearly there with explaining it, but I detect a second thread here, a strictly Hubble story. So essentially what the critique group was saying was, I essentially had 2 different stories going. I had the Hubble picture book biography, and then I had this kind of top level how-to text about how science works, and that they were not working together. I needed to choose a path. Okay, so finally, I'm like trying to figure it out. So I write this note to Marcy Colleen, who many of you know is my longtime accountability partner. And this is what I say in the email. What really interests me about this book is the idea of how science happens. Kids need to know science is messy. Not everyone agrees, especially at first. It could be the data or interpretations of data, but after a while, the preponderance of data and interpretations points one way. This is really important, especially today when we talk about climate change and COVID, because remember, this is an aside, but remember, we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and we are learning new things about this virus, how it spreads, how to stop the spread, and then discovering, and crafting these vaccines. All of this science is happening in real time. And we're getting a lot of things wrong, but then we're getting things right as we do in more and more studies, and we have more and more data. So all of this is going on at the same time I'm writing this. And so I said at the end of my note, I used Hubble as an example But I could have easily used Rutherford, who discovered the atom, or anyone else, right? So I'm finally getting to the question of, what am I trying to say? What do I really care about? And so I'm finally giving myself voice, that I really don't care about writing a biography about Edwin Hubble. What I care about is this messy process of science and showing kids how it really works, because I want them to see themselves in science, right? So I'm finally starting to listen to myself and to Wendy from from a couple months ago. Okay, so you cannot see what's going on here, but what I started doing is I started in my notebook drawing out thumbnails and thinking spread by spread, like kind of what is the narrative, right? What is the narrative flow of science? How does it start? How does the process build? What's a low moment? What's a big eureka moment, right? So I'm trying to kind of shape what is the narrative arc. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm massaging that top level text that I already had. I'm trying to make it lyrical and lovely. This is what I'm also saying in my note to Marcy. I want to keep it simple. I want to use illustrations of scientists from all time periods, countries, genders, fields of research to reinforce parts of the process on each page. Maybe I'll call it How Science Knows. This is what I say in my email to Marcy. And so that's what I did, right? So I'm finally like sketching it out. So at this point, I've tossed out like 2 whole drafts, right? 2 whole story approaches. And so this is what I ended up with. So this is science, the things you know, like the earth is round, circling the sun, our nearest star, so far away. And below blue skies, your body grows thanks to food, fresh water, clean air to breathe, giving you energy to talk and tag, to make swings go. Yes, science is more than textbook stacks and whiteboard facts. Science is how you know. It's the way you make discoveries, not a straight line drawn from I don't know to the truth, not a step-by-step recipe, but a messy path, a squiggle, a dance. So you can see some of this DNA from that top layer that I was working on. This is the version that sold in a multi-house auction in November of 2020, right at the time of the US general election. We're still in COVID. And so science and truth were at the forefront of many people's minds, which I think is why there were multiple houses bidding on this book. However, that is not the end of the story, because making a book is a messy process too, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. I'm going to talk about the process of revising with my editor and what that looked like. But so based on this experience, here are a couple of tips, which you have in your handout that I sent out and will send out again, for how to get unstuck, right? So I'm always a big proponent of going back to your story spark. What are you really trying to say? When you got this story idea, what was exciting about it? And for me, it was always this idea that science is a collaborative process, that people's discoveries build on each other, that there are a lot of people at the table, and that what we know is constantly evolving. So I'm always a proponent of going back to, first of all, when you get a story idea, journal, like what made it exciting? What is it that's so irresistible about this topic that I need to write it? And that way, when you get stuck, sometimes going back to that story spark can be very helpful to get you unstuck. You have to be willing to let go of structure, point of view, or in this case, even the topic that I was writing about. What I really cared about was this process of science. But first, the book was a book about the discovery of the universe. Then it was a biography of Edwin Hubble. And then, I pivoted a third time to a completely new topic, which was scientific inquiry and how science works. Always a big advocate of using mentor texts. I mean, I feel like just like with science, we are never creating something that's wholly new. Most of the time, somebody has done something before that can inspire us and inform what we're doing. And so for me, it was really helpful to think about books like Moonshot, like Winged Wonders, like Before She Was Harriet, like The Next President. These different books that um, had different people coming, overlapping stories, and different people coming together in different ways. And reading and making notes about those mentor texts can really help unlock some things for us sometimes. I'm also a big proponent of unwriting your draft. A lot of people talk about this, but Renee Latulippe is the person that I know who uses the term unwrite. And when I say unwrite your draft, that's essentially summarize the main points of your book. It's also called reverse outlining. So take what you have and then outline what is the main idea of each spread or each paragraph. Or if you're moving from, if it's a longer, a middle grade or a young adult, what are the subjects that you're talking about? And a lot of times, if we unwrite our draft, it's easier to see what we're trying to say versus when we're caught up in individual words. So that's another technique that you can use. And I mean, there is nothing like an outside reader. So whether you use a critique group, critique partners, paid critiques, agent and editor critique at conferences, having outside readers can often help us see things in our drafts that we cannot see, because for us, the whole story is here. And so we cannot see what we haven't put on the page. So I am a big proponent of those critique partners. I mean, as you saw, my critique partners got what I was trying to do months before I even figured out what I was trying to do. So the manuscript sold in a multi-house auction. And then basically I had to go through another 6-month revision process. So this book was about 550 words when it sold. Shortest book I have ever written by a long shot. And we still ended up cutting about 200 words. I think that the final manuscript is somewhere around 370. I did 4 rounds of complete overhaul with my editor, Lisa at Little Brown. The editorial letter I got on this book was amazing. She essentially wanted me to interrogate everything. She wanted me to, because the text was so short, we were going to make every word count, because she really wanted to strengthen the arc and make sure that there was, this is not a traditional narrative, but it does have an emotional arc. There are high points, there are low points, there are trials and failures, and she really wanted to shape that arc. And so I used that same process that I had used in trying to drill down to my story idea, which was, I even wrote down in my journal, this is the process I'm going to go through to confront these editorial notes. This is how I'm going to deal with them. I'm going to go back to my Spark. I'm going to write down and really solidify what I really care about and what's non-negotiable. I'm going to go back to my mentor text for inspiration, and I'm going to use them to kind of help me figure out a basic structure. I'm going to unwrite the draft and see what I'm really trying to say in each section, so that I can rewrite it as lyrically and beautifully as possible. And I'm going to seek outside input from critique partners as necessary to see if I'm really hitting what Lisa wants me to hit. And I had submitted, when I sold the book at auction, I had submitted with this one illustration note. So I had one like global illustration note at the top of the manuscript. And it said, it might be helpful to illustrate 3 science investigations throughout the text to reinforce the different ways scientists follow the scientific process. For example, one where a scientist starts with an explanation, one where she starts with observations, the third is a happy accident. Illustrations should show not just lab experiments, but also constructing models, making observations, and running simulations. It would be nice if at least one investigation ruled out an idea. Please show children of different ethnic, cultural backgrounds, nationalities in roles of scientists, often working together to show the diversity of science and to show the importance of the scientific community. Okay, it was like the world's longest illustration note. But Lisa said, that is a tall order for an illustrator, especially since there's not a lot of guidance in the text. So she's like, I need you to go spread by spread, essentially, and write the visual story so that Cornelia has something to work from. So this is what I did. The visual story, it may be, we're often told, don't write illustration notes. That is often great advice. However, if there is something happening in your story that is not clear from your text, but it is a critical part of telling the story, then you may need to write an illustration note. And that was what happened here. So I was trying to focus on the specific actions. What actions, what things need to happen in the illustrations that are not clear in the text. Now, the hard part for those of us who don't illustrate is often it's really hard to think visually. So here are a couple of things to think about. So typically, if it is a full page spread or a single page illustration, which is what you have on the top, that's a single illustration that covers 2 pages or a spread. Only one action can happen at a time on a 2-page spread, unless you're going to do something just called like spot illustrations. So spot illustrations, you can kind of think of them as like comic panels, but maybe without the borders. And so if you look at the bottom, that is an example of a 2-page spread that has 4 different spot illustrations. So I can have 4 different actions happening in that particular illustration. So I'm thinking about the fact that, I'm limited. I can have either one thing going on or maybe a couple of different things going on. I'm also thinking about the fact that I need to have some visual variety, like things cannot look exactly the same from spread to spread. I need to maybe have different settings or different characters or different actions happening. And so then I need to actually think about the text and then think about what needs to be shown in the book spread by spread. So you can do that a couple of different ways. You can either go back to the thumbnails, which is drawing a rectangle that represents the 2-page spread of your book. And I mean, I'm a horrible artist, but sometimes it's just a combination of like a little line drawing and jotting a few notes about what the picture might show. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can make yourself a whole dummy out of paper by, making a little mock-up book. And that gives you a little bit more room to draw the pictures. You can cut things out of magazines or print things off the internet and like collage stuff in to represent your ideas before you write the illustration note. So before I actually write the note, I'm just trying to think and jot notes about the visual story, striving for variety, realizing that it's either one image or a couple of spot images per page. And then I'm writing those illustration notes. And I always, there's no industry standard, but I always use brackets. I put them in italics and I label them as an illustration note and put them right where they go on the page. And then you realize that an illustrator is going to use that as simply a starting point, and they are always going to have a better idea than what you had in mind, right? So I write these illustration notes, they go to Cornelia, and then she changes a lot of things because she's like, oh, okay, I get what you're trying to, I get what we need to do here. Now I have a better idea for a way to do it, because they are so skilled at visual story. So that's kind of the process that I went through to try to create these story for the book. And then finally, it all comes together in the book. So I'm going to read that for you now. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to close out of that. I'm going to share my other screen because this is not quite the finished book. I think there might be a couple of changes. This is like my most recent, FNG. So I'm going to read this. But now I'm going to read it I'm going to read it to you so you all can see how it turned out. I should say the cool thing. So some picture books get what we call, they have a different jacket flap and case cover. Some people affectionately call these undies. I think this is Carter Higgins, maybe calls them undies. I'm not sure. So this one does have a different case cover, which I think is really cool. So if you ordered a copy of the book, I encourage you to take off your jacket and look at the book underneath, because it's pretty cool. Cornelia did a good job. Yeah, so I know this isn't the finished one, because we do have like end papers. You know, earth warms up, brushed by sun's gentle rays, soil cradles tomatoes which sprout up with water and light. Your swing soars up with the pump of your legs, whoosh, or a push from a friend sending you high. All of this is science, which is how you know. It's the way you make discoveries, starting with natural curiosity, watching and wondering, reading and tinkering, daydreaming and thinking, until you uncover a question you can't answer, not yet. That question becomes your guiding star in the dark. Read, watch, and wonder. What could be the answer? Come up with an idea, then let your imagination lead you. What would you see if your idea were true? Next, search the world for clues, tiny glimpses of truth. Look in labs, on slides or screens, between the trees, under leaves, among the stars. Don't just gather one clue or two, heap them up a mile high. Look for patterns and connections that matter on your winding path to a breakthrough. Remember, though, it won't be easy. You may change course or change your mind, or you might realize your idea was wrong all along. Then you must begin again. That's okay. It's the way science works. It's surprising, messy, beautiful. And often knowing an answer is wrong is as good as finding out what's right. So just keep going, spending hours combing through the ordinary, hoping to find the extraordinary. And when you do, eureka, something new. And you're the first to know. But that's not the end of your adventure. Because every discovery is a chance to chart a new course. With the next question on your lips, wonder beating in your heart, the greatest joy. Because this is science, and science needs you. It needs all of us working together in every corner of the world, sharing our curiosity, comparing our discoveries, solving big problems, making our world a better place. Uncovering whole new worlds, places we've seen only in dreams. Because this is science, which starts with the natural world and noticing. It's sparked by imagination, but shaped by hard work, and there's always more to know. And then the back matter basically treats each spread as goes spread by spread and talks more specifically about how each of these elements comes into play in inquiry. So talking about like curiosity and formulating questions and how you use your question to formulate, maybe an investigation. And so it kind of goes step by step. And then we have the different pictures that also link to the different aspects of the process. And then at the end are some quotes by some very cool scientists. I love this one by Einstein. I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious. So that is the book. It is like literally the shortest book I've ever written. If you are at all inclined, I would love a review on Amazon and or Goodreads or the platform of your choice. If you're a Barnes and Noble person, wherever you get your books. And then I will take questions. Let's see. I think Brene, you were asking about back matter. Yeah, so you notice like none of those words are the words I started with. None of those words are the words that I sold. We basically rewrote the whole thing, but it had like the same idea. So actually, I don't even think I had back matter done for this, Renee. I think for this particular one, I think I had ideas for back matter. I think I said, this is what I envision. But we didn't even write out, I didn't write like all those, because there's kind of like a couple of different experiment threads in the back matter. And those all came out during the revision process. So I basically sold it with ideas for back matter, which is unusual for me because most of the time I do write my back matter. Did I have any say in the illustrator? Yeah, I was asked. I think we might have suggested Cornelia to the editor and she was on board with Cornelia. So yeah, we did have input into the illustrator. Other questions? You can feel free to unmute yourself. You don't have to. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, go for it, Renee.
I just wanted to say that I think you probably already are doing this or have this plan, but how you got to how the book came to be is kind of a good example of the scientific process. And so when you go to classrooms, I'm thinking you could you were talking about the messy handwriting and all this stuff and just saying that's okay. Like it has to be like that.
Well, and I think that's one reason I like writing about scientists and engineers is because I feel like our processes are very similar. There's a lot of, even though I think science and engineering is creative. I know that in science and engineering, we often find out what doesn't work, and then we have to try something else. And that's the same thing that we do with writing. And the way that we test out our writing is by showing it to other people who tell us maybe what is or isn't working. Jenny wants to know, why did it take so long between the book, when the book was acquired and its release 5 years later? So this is an illustrator issue. So we were waiting on Cornelia. And a lot of times this happens if you have a really talented illustrator that you really want on the book, you may be asked, they don't have time in their schedule. And so you will be asked, are you willing to wait for this person? And so it often pushes the book out by a couple of years. In fact, my next picture book, Lauren Tamaki is going to illustrate, who is amazing. She won, I think they won the Cybert on Seen and Unseen. So yeah, I definitely want Lauren to illustrate my book, but I'm going to have to wait a couple years because she's not available. And so that happens a lot when you have a really in-demand illustrator.
I have a comment, may I?
Yeah, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, I love it. I absolutely love this. I'm going to tell you why. But also, I wrote it in the notes. I love when they're looking up in the trees, that's one of the places to look. And it made me think of Meg's book, where she looks up in the trees and she discovers the monarchs. I'm like, oh, that's such a cool. Now that I know that, if I have the chance to teach your book, I'll do that. We present STEM in the school.
Oh, awesome.
And I love this book. Yeah, we do at the elementary schools here in Boerne, Texas. And cool. I love it because we have the kids do experiments after we read a book or whatever. And whenever they get something wrong, we're like, hey, that's okay. That's what scientists do too. And this has to be in every elementary school for that reason.
Oh, thank you,
Just-
Linda.
Yeah.
Well,
Top
and
notch.
that's what I tell people. I mean, that's a data point, right? Getting something wrong, knowing that this is not the answer is a data point, right? So I think, what is that quote attributed to Einstein, right? I have learned 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb, right? So even getting something wrong, that's a piece of information. So, the hard thing is that we so often put our emotions in that, right? That we did, but it's just data,
Right. How else would we have gotten to the moon? I mean,
right?
come on. No, yeah. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's all trial and failure. I mean, at different levels. Yeah. So
When, when,
Mhm.
sorry,
Yeah,
when
please.
did you come up with the title? You had different, you were close, but when did it seems
Uh,
it's perfect.
I think that's a good question. I don't know if we sold it with, I think we came up with This Is How You Know before we sold it, because I had already had that vague idea of like, is it how science knows?
Right.
So we came up with This Is How You Know before. And then How Science Happens isn't really a subtitle, but they wanted to put, my editor was like, I feel like we need to put something on it. This Is How You Know is so vague if you don't even know what this book is about. She's like, we need a little something to tell people
Mhm.
what this book is about if they have absolutely zero clue. So that ended up on the book kind of late. Yeah. Does anybody else have questions? Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, was this surprising to you that your writing was so different for this manuscript compared to, your other books? Like, you really had to pare this one down. What was that like for you? Because, you're this nonfiction, full of information and done beautifully, but like this one's really,
Yeah.
woo, so pared down. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, well, and I struggled because for whatever reason with this particular book, I had a hard time with lyrical, but not rhyming. Like I kept, with lyrical, it's okay to have like internal rhyme, but I kept having like occasional end rhymes, and my editor was like, no. She was like, you cannot do that. So I was having like a really bad block because I was trying to make it lyrical. And I'll tell you, there are people, so this book did sell at auction, but we got tons of passes on this book. And there were people who basically did not like this kind of nebulous woo-woo lyrical approach. They actually wanted a more meaty, text-heavy, this is how science inquiry works book. So this wasn't for everybody. But for whatever reason, I just got really attached to that really simple how to high level first layer text, and then trying to massage that into something really kind of lyrical and, like a lot of the SEL books, just really kind of expansive and inspiring. And I was trying to go for something like that. So,
Well, the other thing I wanted to say is how it's amazing that this was 5 years ago, but now like this book is needed right now more than ever, right?
yes.
So you wouldn't have really known 5 years ago the way things would be this at this moment in time.
No, and in fact, I mean, in some ways, I feel like this is, it's hard to wait 5 years versus like maybe 3 or 4 years. But I also feel like you said, this is the right time for the book to come into the world, and hopefully people will discover it and hand it to kids, and it will be useful to them. But yeah, I mean,
Or you could send it to the White House because that could help too. Just saying. I live in Washington. Just saying.
well,
You're assuming they read though. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you.
Okay, let's stop.
No. What I was going to say is, what's been really interesting, and I'll just say this as kind of like a high level thing. it's become harder and harder to get attention for picture books or any books, right? So like all my other books, I got reviews from Kirkus and School Library Journal and Booklist and all these professional review organizations. I got reviews before the book came out. And so that's great. I mean, you can add that to your marketing copy on the website, and librarians are reading School Library Journal. And so they're like, "Ooh, I gotta order this book." Well, and this is for everybody right now. It's harder and harder to get reviews, period. And reviews even before launch. Like you're lucky if you get a review before launch. And a lot of people don't get reviewed at all. So this, what's been challenging is like this book has not been reviewed. And there are some library systems that won't order a book that's not reviewed. So I've had to like think of different things, right? To try to get people to think about this book. So I've like been personally emailing STEM influencers, asking them if they want a copy. I've been like asking, I new children's bookstores that are opening. I'm like, oh, I got this idea from, I think it was Serena Bowen on the Am Writing podcast. I was like, maybe for these brand new bookstores, I'm going to ask them if they want me to just send them a signed copy. Like, just so somebody, like, I just need somebody to see this book. So yeah, I would say I've had to be a lot more creative in this current climate because it is a really challenging climate to bring a book into the world. I mean, books are expensive. There have been cuts to school and library funding, and it's just harder to get reviews. And I don't know why. I think, part of it during the pandemic, they used to send out more hard copy books. And I think during the pandemic, we started sending out digital PDFs. And I mean, with a picture book, it's just not the same. And it's really hard to review them. And I don't know if it's that or just the sheer volume of books being produced and people can't keep up. I don't know what it is, but getting reviews is harder and harder. So yeah, which is why I'm like, you know what? All I can do is ask you guys to like drop me a little review on Amazon or Goodreads or whatever, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop, and like hopefully maybe that will inspire some of the professional reviewers to be like, oh, maybe I should pay attention to this book. But we can't. This is the process. This is what happens. You can't control it. You just hope the book finds the right reader. Yeah. Oh, library thing. Okay, thanks, Pat. I'll write that one down. All right. Anybody else have any questions before I spin our magic wheel? Okay. Okay, let's see if I can. Let's see what we're doing here. We're going to share the wheel. All right, so if I do this, are you now seeing my wheel? Okay, are you guys seeing the Wheel of Fortune? Okay, so I'm going to spin it and I will contact whoever the lucky winner is because there's a lot of folks not here. Okay, lucky, Mindy is the winner. I'm going to put her name on here. I don't think she's here live. All right. Well, if you all have any follow-up questions or, feel free to check in. Thank you all for coming. This is, the most fun thing in the world for me is to be with fellow writers. So I appreciate you all coming out and spending time with me and helping me celebrate this. And big thanks to those who have ordered and are reviewing, and I appreciate it. I will get out the recording.
Congrats.
All right.
Congrats.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Kristen.